Welcome to Triple T and Me. Today, my special guest is Trung Le, who is the founder of a God's Word app in Vietnam, hence my background of the Vietnamese flag. Trung, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
I remember when I first met you. Do you remember when we first met?
I don't remember the exact occasion, but yeah, I just remember that when you first came to Columbus as an intern, that's when we first met.
Yes, sir. During the summer of 2012, when I was an intern at First Christian Church, your American family connected us, and we had lunch at Piper's Gourmet Catering. That was what it was called at the time, PGC. It was very good. And I remember us meeting there. You bought my lunch. You were nice enough to do that. So thanks for being a great friend. But I'd love for you to share your journey from Vietnam, of where you grew up, to when God brought you to America.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Vietnam until I was 16. And then an opportunity came to me, which brought me to the States as an exchange student. And of the many places the 50 states I could have ended up, I ended up going to French Lick, Indiana, living there with an American family for a year. And after that, I went to Franklin College, 4 years there, and then I got a job with Cummins, which brought me to Columbus, Indiana. It's been 9 years now. I've lived here in Columbus as a faithful Columbus resident. I worked for Cummins for 6 years. Then I decided that I wanted to do something on my own, so I left Cummins, started my own business. I founded Blue Falcon Consultancy, which was a company to help American lumber producers sell their products in Vietnam. And that journey brought me back to Vietnam. So for the past 3 years now, I've been moving back and forth, traveling back and forth between the States and Vietnam to work on my business. The lumber business it's fell pretty spectacularly. And recently I've left the business to spend full time on app CHÚA, which is God's Word app. My wife and I started that back in August of last year, and it's been more successful than I suppose we could ever imagine. But yeah, that's in a very brief description. That's how I've come to the States, and then moved back to Vietnam. But yeah, still I have a house here in Columbus. And
thanks for sharing that. And so in your in-between trips from America back to Vietnam is when you met your wife, and you're going on your 1 year anniversary. So congrats on that. But how did you meet her? You just met her as you were there back in Vietnam doing some business?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for reminding me of my 1 year anniversary, because when my wife watches, she's probably will kill me. I'm still here in the States. She's there in Vietnam. She's waiting for her green card application, and that won't be done. If everything were to go well, it won't be done until about this time next year. So every year I make a trip back to the States to do my taxes, and obviously because my wife's green card is not done yet, so I couldn't have her with me. But yeah, anyway, thanks for reminding me that. Now, how I met her was, well, it would have been August of 2017. That was when I've left Cummins for a couple of months and stumbled on the idea of doing lumber sales representative work on Blue Falcon Consultancy. So just a month before I traveled back to Vietnam, I met my wife online on a dating website. Now, one of the first things that I noticed on her profile was, of course, first of all, that this is a pretty girl, and on the website it said that she had smiled at me, which we learned later on that no, she didn't at all. She just, yeah, it's a long story. She didn't smile at me, but I thought she did. But so I was excited, and then so I went on her profile and found out that this girl is a Catholic. And this is something that I want to mention, just because I had spent the previous 11 years of my life in the States, going to church with my American family, learning about God. But I never took God seriously. I continuously deny and resist God. I did not come from a Christian background. My family was Buddhist, and so I came to the States. When I first going to church with my American family, I thought I would go because I enjoyed the atmosphere. I enjoyed the lessons I learned at church. I enjoyed making fun of my host dad, who's a pastor at Most Rich Church in French Lick at the time. Enjoyed making fun of him whenever he fumbles on something. And I just enjoyed the people at church. And sometimes after service, we would get together and have a meal, and everybody was just so kind. I enjoyed all of that. But in terms of being serious about who God is or whether I believe, no, I didn't. In fact, coming from the background that I had, and being from a communist country like Vietnam, back then we were taught that everything has a material explanation. What I mean by that is this, believing in a God that you cannot touch, cannot smell, cannot hear, cannot prove with scientific evidence is ridiculous. It's like asking somebody to believe in fairies. That's where I came from. And although I was eager to learn and enjoyed what I learned from the other Christians around me, I did not take it seriously, and I purposely resisted. So anyway, that's where I came from, and for 11 years that was the way it was. Then I met my wife, who was my girlfriend at that time. And the girl was Catholic, which was kind of funny to me, because when I first saw that, I thought, I really like this girl. I thought she's cute, and hey, she just smiled at me. And as we talk some more, then I really like her. But I thought, man, she's Catholic. So if I had this thought in the back of my mind, if we ended up getting married, I guess I won't be able to escape this God, whatever it is I want to do. I've tried to, resist him for 11 years, but I guess he's gonna be a part of my life now for as long as I'm alive. I won't be able to escape it. But anyway, so I met her, and one of the things that I asked my wife about at the very beginning was that, hey, I'm not a Christian and I don't believe in God, so would that be a problem for you? And she said, no, it's not. I did not believe her at first. I thought, yeah, so okay, this girl said that she's okay with it, but we'll see. And as we spend more time together, I went back to Vietnam and we spent more time together. We started to hang out. I realized that she meant what she said. She did not mind that I did not believe. But yeah, she was very, very accepting, very loving. So that encouraged me, and we got married after after a year and a half dating, we got married back in May of 2019. 3 months after we got married, we had a conversation about what my wife would do once she graduates from college. My wife has had a pretty interesting childhood. She grew up in Vietnam. Then when she was 13 years old, she went to Canada to study and live with her aunt. She lived there for 7 years, and eventually she ran into a problem with her visa, so she was forced to move back to Vietnam. So when she was back, I guess she was depressed and just felt out of place for a while. As you can imagine, you hear someone who spent most of their formative years, or all of their formative years, in a completely different culture. In many ways, she was more Canadian than she was Vietnamese. And she came back to Vietnam. She found herself so different than everybody else. So she had a difficult times, and she did not go to school for a year, just spent time at home, just gathering herself, cooking, taking care of everybody. And so anyway, she later going back to college, and by the time that we got married, she was on her last year of college, ready to graduate. She was older than the other students. I mean, the rest of the students, she's at that time she was 24, and most Vietnamese students, by the time that they graduate, they would have been 21. So she was older, but she was at a point in her life where she thought, I'm ready to graduate now, but what should I do? And lo and behold, she came up with this idea of doing an audiobook app. Her original idea was to do something similar to the app Audible, probably the leading audiobook app in the world. I wanted to do something like that, only in Vietnamese. Why? Because Vietnam has such a low readership rate. According to different statistics, Vietnamese reads on average anywhere between 1 to 4 books a year, and that includes textbooks. It's very low. In the US, the number is 12 books per person a year. And even for the US, it's still not that high. But anyway, for Vietnam, then it's very, very low. And for both of us, books have been such impactful things for us. Personally, I am a bookworm. Books have changed my life. So we thought, hey, if Vietnam is to ever becoming a developed country with an educated population where people would truly not simply just trying to make a living, but also enrich themselves and make the country a better place, then reading more would be a way to go about doing that. So I mentioned this idea of an audiobook app, and I thought it's a great idea. Vietnamese, with the modern age and how being in a developing country, everybody was more concerned about making a living, and everybody was very busy all the time. So I suppose when that's the case, you just don't have that much time to set aside to pick up a book and read it. But if there's some way for you to listen to a book, whether it be when you're cooking or when you are out and about taking a bus, it would encourage you to read and allow you to read more. I thought it was a great idea, and so that's where we started. We had nothing at the time but an idea. I did not know what it was like to build an app or what it's like to recording books or anything like that. We had nobody. We had no colleagues, no people, nothing. We just had the idea. And we started talking to people, and we was eventually introduced to this gentleman who we later found out to be a Catholic musician.
Hmm.
And the guy, when he met us, he told us that, hey, I spent 8 years in audiobook, and I've recorded the entire Bible in Vietnamese, along with a number of other Christian-related books, like the Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. And that's what he's done. And he said that, hey, if you guys serious about this, then I will give you the rights to use my books, put it on your app, see what happens. We got that, and we came back to our house, and that night we were sitting in bed talking about it, and I told my wife, hey, if this gentleman has recorded the entire Bible, I really think that the Bible deserves its own app, that it shouldn't be put with just a general audiobook app with all the other books that we were thinking, but it should have its own app, and then we should just build an app serving Vietnamese Catholics, which number in the 7 million. So there's 7 million Vietnamese Catholics living in Vietnam and abroad. We should do an audio Bible app for Vietnamese Catholics. And that way, first of all, we clearly know that these people know what the Bible is, and they would have clearly an interest in reading it. And then secondly, there's also this 7 million people that are not being served very well. I was talking from a very business standpoint at that time, that there's 7 million people that are not being served well. There's no app like ours out there on the market. So if we come out with something like this, I think we have a good chance of success. And if this thing succeed, then we would have a shot at doing just a general audiobook app and succeed with it. But if this audiobook app doesn't go anywhere with all the supports and the reasons for it to succeed, then obviously the other audiobook app is not going to go anywhere. So let's use this as a testing ground for our idea. And we also have all of this already recorded books. We simply just build an app, put those books on there. It'll be much easier for us to do than to record the books ourselves and then do everything from scratch. My wife agreed, and then we started. For me personally, at that time, that was also the time when I've started to experience a change in my personal faith, because prior to that, I've purposely resisted God. But when we started doing the audio Bible app, I thought to myself, hey, you've always wanted to read the Bible. You know that it's a major work of literature of the Western civilization, and you've always wanted to read it, but you've never done it. So now you have all this Bible recording, and as well as the text version of it. You might as well use your own app, read it, see what it's about, so that you can talk to people about it. And so I started to do it. And I also kind of made this quiet prayer to God one day, if you will, that God, I will open my heart, and if you are there, please let me know. So since that day and since that project, my faith has really experienced more growth than the previous 11 years that I've spent in the States. And it's all simply because I've opened myself up and stopped resisting so much, but was eager to learn and just really dig deep within myself to understand who God is and whether He is someone that I can believe in. I can only say that it has made me a better person, and with the faith in God that I now have, I will say that it's still my faith is still very young.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I don't feel all that comfortable sharing it with people just yet, simply because of how there's still so many things within my journey in faith that I'm still needing to learn and need to understand and discover. So I still don't feel that comfortable sharing it yet, but I can say that to this point, I feel more complete because I believe. So yeah, that's how the story goes. And in terms of the app, we made it public back in early February, and within the past few months, we've gone from practically 0 user to now over 40,000 users. Most of those 40,000 users, I really believe that without this app, they might have never picked up a Bible otherwise, or have had access to the Bible otherwise. It's been really mind-blowing for us. I did not expect it to be like that. The most I thought was, we did this app, we'll be lucky if we get to 50,000 users by the end of this year. And within the span of 2 months, with like 42,000 now, 4/5 of the way there. It's more than anything that any of us in the project team could have imagined. And then talking about the project team as well, we've gone from me and my wife, it's the two of us with an idea, nothing else. We've gone from that to now 7 other team members, either working full-time or part-time for the project. Some responsible for the coding of the app, some for marketing and spreading the word, and creating content, designing the app and the content in the app. And then we come from having no app to now having an app with 42,000 user. Yeah, it's been a pretty remarkable journey so far.
That's awesome. Chung, I am overjoyed to hear that story, and I thank you for sharing it. In our friendship, we got to have lunch many a times. And then I ended up being your roommate because you were nice enough to offer me a spare bedroom, and I paid rent. In all our conversations, we talked about faith, but I never wanted to push, as I know your American family didn't either. You know, they did want to push faith on you, but just wanted to be open. And but one particular conversation comes to mind, and it was when we were having lunch somewhere downtown, and I remember you said, like, first I asked you, like, hey, so when you were going to church with your American family, what'd you think? And you're like, you know, it was good and I enjoyed it, like you were saying earlier. And then I remember you saying, like, towards the end of your year living there, you thought maybe you would become a Christian, like maybe you were just kind of on the fence about it. But then once you left and went to college, then you got out of the habit of going to church, so you really didn't see the need. You kind of returned back to where you were in your faith, which was not believing. And I appreciated you sharing that at the time. And then I asked you, like, so do you think you need faith, or do you think you need God, and or something along those lines? And I remember your response, and your response was, you know, I guess if I experience a tragedy, I may need God, but I really don't see the need for him now. And I remember responding with that, like, you don't want to, you know, wait for a tragedy to, you know, let you know or warn you that you need God. And you said, you know, I guess you're right. But I remember that conversation. And so I'm so grateful for how God has brought you to where you are from where you were. And I'm glad that it didn't take a tragedy, but actually he used a blessing, your wife, to help you come to know him. So that's just an awesome story. And I understand it's new, but just in sharing what you shared is so encouraging to people of all levels of faith, including those that don't have faith. So I just appreciate you sharing that. And I love your journey. So thanks for your story.
For sure. One thing about me is that I've always believed in honesty, and try to be as honest with myself and others as I can. I still haven't had this conversation with my parents. My parents and my entire side of the family are not Christian. They are Buddhist. So I can only imagine the reactions they would have about my belief. And so having this conversation here, I mean, if that the conversation that we're having now are heard by my parents, for example, I really don't know what their reaction would be. But then again, coming back to that point about honesty, I've always believed that you got to be true to yourself, and whatever the consequence may be.
What about God's word has helped you to go from feeling like trusting in God was challenging to do to making your faith solid?
So I've been jumping around in the Bible. I read Genesis, I read Exodus, and I've watched a few movies on those topics as well. Then I move over to the New Testament, and I've read the first three of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke. I've read those three, learning about how Jesus lives his life, and just try my best to draw the lessons out of that and make the thinking and the judgment for myself that, hey, here's this guy who lived 2,000 years ago. These are the things that he said. Is that something believable? And I, as a you know a human being who's been taught critical thinking all my life, determined that he is who he said he is, which is the Son of God. I've done the work myself. I read the Bible, and just the more I learn, then the more everything makes sense. I suppose with faith too, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, that with faith, there's that leap that you have to make before you can believe. And it just doesn't come purely from your rational thinking. That you can just, with faith, it's not something that you can just do a black and white equation, 2 + 2 = 4, and arrive at a conclusion. You have to make that leap. And so when I open my heart in that quiet prayer that I made. That was the first time that I surrendered some of my doubt and that rational defense that I have, and just be willing to entertain the fact that there may be something out there that is bigger, that's something that the lens of science cannot see or cannot truly pinpoint an answer. Yeah, and then I read the story of Jesus. Obviously, I've I think a lot about those stories and reflect on how Jesus lives his life. And I just thought, man, truly as a man, like this guy, he is one incredible human being. If you just look at him as purely, okay, not as a son of God or anything, if it's just as a human, he's truly a remarkable human being with the sacrifice that he's made, the love that he showed to others that clearly have no relationships, no family ties to him, from the people who are shunned away, the ones who are sick and full of disease, to those who other people just thought nothing of, you know. Yeah, and so he just did things that just very out of the ordinary, the time that he was in. All the time saying that I am the Son of God, so I'm here for a purpose. Yeah, it's just remarkable to me. So lately I've been reading Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis really has a way of putting Christianity into a belief that's easy for a like mortal man like you and I to understand. And C.S. Lewis once again makes the point, hey, you look at Jesus, and you really have two choices with what he said. You either accept him as what he say, or he's just out of his mind. He's crazy. There's just that two options. There's no other way. You cannot say that he's a great moral teacher because of all the things that he done and say and believe in. He's definitely not just a moral teacher. He's either a crazy and a fool, or he is the Son of God. That is very true of the life of Jesus. So the more that I read, the more that I'm convinced that he is who he said he is.
For those that may be viewing this that are where you were and they don't believe, or maybe even resisting God like you did, are there any other recommendations that you have for them?
Open yourself up and learn as much as you can about Christianity. Pick up the Bible, read it. If for anything else, it's a good reading. It is a major work of human literature, and it has had a huge influence on Western civilization. So if you are like me and maybe you don't believe you're very rational, at least you will get the benefits out of reading the Bible and knowing what it's about and the stories in it, because that will help you tremendously when you watch movies, when you read any other pieces of Western novels or major works of literature. There's all kind of biblical references in those works. So it will help you further yourself intellectually if you read it. And as you read it, critically, right, think for yourself again the question of how these stories were written. Is it believable? Read about Jesus, ask yourself again the same question. Is he the man he claims to be? And I think if you do all of those things with an open heart and inquisitive attitude, then you get there. I think God will let you know.
I love it. In your time as a student at Springs Valley High School in French Lick, Larry Bird's alma mater, What are some highlights that stick out to you in your time being a student there?
How much fun I had that year. I had a lot of struggles too. Don't get me wrong. Like I've when I came, my English was terrible, and I barely understood what people were saying. So with that came so many misunderstandings where I, for my first year in Springs Valley as an exchange student, my tactic was whatever people say or whatever people ask, if I don't understand, I would just say yes, yes. And you can imagine, man, there's so many times I said yes to things that I should have not, or that I realized later on that they really did not expect me to say yes. Or the food for the other, as another example. I had a hard time getting used to some of the food that the cafeteria serve, like salad, because Vietnamese don't eat raw vegetables, not raw vegetable with this milky dressing on top. Like Vietnamese don't eat that. So that took me a while to get used to. Or like the use of cheese, and the French liquors love to have biscuit and gravy, which I thought, man, that is so rich. I don't know why people like it. I've come to learn. I've come to love all of those things now, but I didn't then. So I struggle with those things. Now, on the other hand, I had a lot of fun because our host family at the same year hosted two other exchange students, one from Germany and one from Hong Kong. Adding in Dustin, then that made four of us. I mean, four boys at the same age, senior in high school. We supported each other a lot through that difficult times. Those other two exchange students, and then Dustin, being that he was the star of the football team at that time. He was the quarterback of the high school football team. So then we all had somebody to admire and look up to, and like feel like the cool kids just because we know this guy and he's our brother, our host brother. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My host mom Leslie was also a big help when I was there. She was the biology teacher at the high school, so she saved me many times with her advice on the struggles that we were going through in school. And then all the teachers, many of them were just very patient and helpful. So all in all, I would say that the people were the thing that I appreciated the most during that time. I don't think I could have done all that I did without them.
You were called Jack. That was your American name. Some of your American family and friends still call you Jack, but Jack was your American name.
Yeah, that's right. And whenever I go back to French Lick or when I see my American family, they still call me Jack. There are a few, like Uncle Daryl or Dustin. From time to time, they would call me Trung, but everybody else still calls me as Jack, and it is going to be forever a part of me. One of these days, when I become a U.S. citizen, you don't know when that happens. I might change my name to Jack, because I believe that when you make the citizen, you become an American citizen, and they ask you what name you want to have on your passport. So I've seen people in the past, my old colleagues from from Cummins who've decided to adopt a new name when they got the citizenship. So I might do the same thing.
I love your story, and I love that out of all the states, as you said earlier, he ended up in Indiana, and
Yeah.
out of all the towns in Indiana, you ended up in French Lick, and through that you gained another family, an American family. You gained so many friends, and I'm glad that I'm one of those friends. And so, thanks for just being a blessing. This has been awesome. Thanks for being my guest. Is there any last words that you would like to pass on to viewers?
Yeah, it's not so much something to the viewers, but I guess it's to you that I appreciate you as a friend as well. You have done so much for me during the past 3 years I was gone. Just, being a good neighbor, coming through, checking on my house, on my car, making sure that everything is okay during my absence. And I've said thank you many times before, but I don't feel like those thank yous were enough in expressing how much I'm grateful that I've met you and have had you in my life. And now that you are my neighbor, I'm sure we'll see each other more.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate it. And I'm always glad to help out, especially when you're out of the country. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but Megan and I look forward to you and your wife being here and us being able to get to know your wife as well. We already are so thankful for our friendship with you, and we're excited to gain a friendship with her.
It's an exciting time.
Absolutely. In closing, is it okay if I pray with you?
Yes, sure.
Okay, let's pray. Lord, I thank you so much for Chung. Some call him Jack, and I thank you so much for him. Lord, I thank you that you knew every chapter that was going to take place in his life up to this point. You knew that it would be good for him, and it would bring him closer to you to live with his American family in French Lick. You knew that it would bring you closer to him to go to Franklin College. You knew that it would bring him closer to you to date his girlfriend that is now his wife. And I just thank you for the transformation that you've made possible in his life. And I know that that took him, as he mentioned, surrendering some of his strong opinions and realizing that he needed you and just needed to let go. I thank you for his story, and I pray for his app and he and his wife as they navigate the decisions they need to make to help people that are in their home country that believe in you, but also those that are seeking. And I pray for those that are users to pass this information about the app onto their friends that don't know you, and that they would come to know you through reading your word in this app. Lord, I pray for the viewers and myself to be able to support Chung and his wife in the ways we can, through prayer, through encouraging them, and if possible, through financial gifts. Lord, I thank you so much for Jesus and the hope that we have in him. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks so much, Chung.
Thanks, Tyler.
You take care.
You too, man.